Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the New York Yankees. We are closing in on the beginning of spring training for the 2025 season. It's been a quiet offseason for the Yankees. We did pick up 3 players in the Rule 5 draft, made a couple of trades, primarily bringing some left-handed relief help onto the roster, and have made a minor free agent signing or two. But we really haven't done too much. But now perhaps the big move of our offseason is in front of us. You can see we've made an offer to Walker Buehler, $11 million for 1 year. He's been kind of lingering out on the free agent market for a couple of months at this point. Part of the reason is that he's coming off of 2 serious injuries. He hasn't pitched since 2022. But our scout says he's got high accuracy on him. And he certainly still looks like he could be an above-average major league pitcher. We're not bringing him on to be an ace. Basically, we're bringing him on potentially to be a 4th starter for us behind Cole, Rodon, and Severino. Move Nestor Cortez back to the number 5 spot in the rotation and likely move Dre Jameson into more of a long relief swingman kind of role. So it would be a real nice addition to be able to bring Walker Buehler onto our pitching staff at this late moment. We had looked at signing him earlier in the offseason, and unfortunately for us, he had no interest in signing with us because he said he didn't get along well and his personality would clash with our manager, Aaron Boone. But apparently sitting on the free agent market for over 2 months will change people's standards, and Buehler's at least willing to entertain an offer from us right now. We've also, since our last episode, made a couple more of international amateur free agent offers. We've signed 4 players to start, haven't gotten any really big fish. We've made an offer to the starting pitcher, Juan Zavala. Interesting prospect, good personality, certainly has the stamina to start, potentially has really good movement and control on his pitches. The issue is his stuff is not projected to be that good. But he does potentially have a 6-pitch arsenal. So my thought is that if a couple of those pitches we can wring a little extra out of him with good coaching in the minors, maybe he becomes a useful pitcher down the line. And we only had to offer him $150,000, and he favors that offer right now. And we've also made a offer to shortstop Archibaldo Flores, $1.35 million. So that's obviously a bigger ticket item if we're to bring him on board. Looks like he could be a pretty solid defensive infielder. The question is whether his bat will develop enough. But take a flyer on him. So we haven't gotten the big guns in terms of our international amateur free agents this year. As I said, we have signed 4, though. The 2 most interesting guys that we have brought on board, first baseman Jorge Robledo and right fielder Jorge Valadara. As you can see, our scouts think they're 3.5, 4-star potential players. So not bad, but we don't have a 5-star potential international amateur free agent like we did get last year with the pitcher Simao Cantino, who was not great in rookie ball, 2-3 record with a 5.87 ERA, but certainly would expect bigger things from him coming up in his age 20 season with the team. And since the Yankees are in win-now mode, we have adjusted our scouting and development budgets down just a little bit to give us a little more free money to play with during the season, potentially, if we do end up signing Buehler. But right now, the exciting thing for us over the next 3 weeks or so until spring training begins is will we get Buehler signed, and will we get either of those international amateur free agents signed? And we did get Juan Zavala signed, so that's our 5th player in this international amateur free agent period. And supposedly we're the leader right now on both Flores and Walker Buehler, so we'll see what happens over the next week or 2. And it's a big day for the Yankees here on February 11th, 2025. We've got Walker Buehler on board, signed the 1-year deal. Also got the international amateur free agent Archibaldo Flores signed. So added a big gun. You can see fan interest back at 100 or higher at this point. Pretty glad to have him on board. It had been a quiet off-season for the Yankees generally, as I talked about, without making a splash. As I said, my expectation is Buehler probably will slot in as our fourth starter, but we're going to look at a sixth-man rotation here as we get ready for the start of spring training, which we typically run with. And actually, according to Aaron Boone, he's going to slot in Buehler as our third starter, even ahead of Sevy. So I think with Rodon, Cole, Buehler, Severino, and right now he's got Jameson ahead of Cortez for the 5 spot. Definitely like the rotation. Definitely feel like we've got some depth there now. The trade-off that we had to make to be able to bring Buehler on board is that kind of left a hole on the team at first base, letting Anthony Rizzo move on, but we think we can move the reigning Rookie of the Year in the American League, Austin Wells, over to first. And with Stanton, Bellinger, and Judge, with Dominguez probably regularly playing while Stanton or Judge DHs and Outman in the outfield, think we still hopefully will have enough offense there. Would still love to potentially move on from Giancarlo Stanton. 4 days left for him to recover from that ruptured MCL that really disrupted and ruined his season last year. But at this point, he's still not willing to waive his no-trade clause, unfortunately. So looks like we're stuck with him, and we'll see what his scouting report looks like when we scout him in a few days after he's recovered from that injury. And I haven't scouted Stanton yet, but he is officially wrecked physically now rather than the fragile that he used to be. So that's not shocking either. We hope, the home run power and the eye remain there, and really can't deal with too much more deterioration in the contact, the gap power, and the avoiding strikeouts. Again, it's a bad contract for the Yankees. Would have loved to move on from this. We've tried multiple times through this playthrough. The only good news is that after this season, the numbers start coming down a little bit. It'll be 29,000 in 2026, down to 25,000 in 2027, and then we'll have a team option in his age 38 season for that same amount, which I would think is extremely unlikely for us to exercise. And we've got a pretty big roster as we begin spring training today of 45 players in camp, the 38 on our 40-man roster, plus we brought 7 players additionally into camp. I think we're definitely going to have some decisions to make at the back end of the pitching staff, and even potentially for the final utility player or two on our roster. So going to be important for players to remain healthy during camp. We are going to be spending some time letting people learn how to play some different positions also. So hopefully, most importantly, the next month or so, the Yankees stay healthy, and in a best-case scenario, we'll also have some players get trained up a little bit to give us a little more defensive versatility with some options and some players going forward. And in perhaps the least surprising news, Giancarlo Stanton out for 6 months with a fractured knee. So going to be another season wasted for Giancarlo. We will place him on the 60-day IL. Still not willing to waive his no-trade clause. So maybe we have him back if we end up as a playoff team. That definitely does weaken our roster a bit. But to be honest, it was probably just a matter of time until it happened. So at least we have options, and there is one interesting option still out there, and that would be our old friend Anthony Rizzo, who's still on the market. We could certainly pivot to try to bring him back. That would allow us to move Wells back into an outfield spot and give us another proven bat. Wouldn't be the worst thing to have Rizzo's good personality back in the clubhouse. We don't have quite enough money to bring him on board at this point. And since we are now in spring training, we can't really adjust our money anymore. We actually will have a little more money in the payroll once we get our 43-man roster down a bit, because I think when some of those players are in spring training, I think they do have a factor on the money that you have available on the margin somehow. So it doesn't look like we have quite enough to sign him right now, but I think he's a pretty good fallback option at that price for a 1-year deal. Says he wants $3.6 million. How about $3 million? And we're not going to guarantee you a starting spot yet, but we'll throw that in to throw a bone to you if we have to raise the money a little bit. We came down to $3.1 million, so that's positive. And we probably will be playing Rizzo if we do get him against right-handers. I don't think we'll be playing him against lefties, but if we can get him for $3.1 million, I think that would be a pretty good deal for us to have him back. We declined his option, I believe, for $17 million in the offseason, and then he was looking at $8.5 to $9 million a year once we let him hit free agency. So to get him back for a little over $3 million now, I think would be a nice move for the Yankees, particularly given that we know that Stanton's basically gone for the year at this point. And Rizzo is back with the Yankees, so we will obviously get him onto the roster into camp, and we'll make sure that we switch the lineups around a bit to ensure that he can get in shape over the next couple of weeks before we head north to begin the season. And as we head into the final few days of spring training, just lost another outfielder, James Outman, a utility outfielder, fractured tibia, going to be out for about 5 weeks. So getting a little light on outfielders now with the injury to Stanton. Certainly Outman doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term issue. Likely that will give us the opportunity to make at least one interesting decision with the position players that we bring up, though. We'll definitely probably let someone who was ultimately going to be cut otherwise make the roster because of that injury. So we'll get a look at somebody else for the major league level for the first few weeks of the season, and then hopefully Outman will be back and healthy for us. So we've made it to the end of spring training, obviously losing Stanton again. The worst news, Outman going to be out to begin the season, as we also talked about. Other than that, though, the team is pretty healthy. Higgy is banged up with a bruised shoulder. Still question whether he's going to make the roster as our backup or not, even after we signed him as a free agent. But other than that, the team is really healthy. So it's just a matter of getting from 42 down to 26. And as we're working through the pitching staff, trying to get down to 13 pitchers, we've still got 5 cuts to make. And I saw something kind of unique. Hayden Wisniewski, who you may remember we picked up in the Rule 5 draft, thought he had a chance to make the team for us as a kind of swing man who could start for us or relieve for us. And I don't think I've ever had a one-star player in camp. So that was the one thing that was surprising. But it was also surprising, to see him as a relief pitcher with decent stuff, movement, and control as only being 1 star. But kind of interesting because normally players' star ratings go up when you move them from being a starter to a reliever. But with the fact that he's got a 4-pitch arsenal, kind of unique here that if you set him to a starting pitcher, it actually says he's kind of better than in his role as a reliever. He's not going to make our team either way. Not that the star ratings are what it's all about, but certainly he's a average pitcher at best, likely a little below average. So we are going to send him back to the Cubbies. Thank Wisniewski for being in camp with us, but he is not going to make the team this year, at least the Yankees team. And we've got the Yankees roster down to 27 players, so we still need to cut one more pitcher. The rotation, feeling pretty good about it. We've got Rodon, last year's American League Cy Young Award winner Garrett Cole, new addition Walker Buehler, Luis Severino, and then we're going to go with Dre Jameson as the number 5 starter, since we at least have his arbitration rights next year, unlike Nestor Cortez. King is going to be our closer again, the youngster Yuendrys Gomez, setup man. Dylan Lee, who we brought on in a trade in middle relief, along with Brian Abreu and Evan Phillips for sure. The lefty Taylor Rogers that we brought on in a trade, and Joe Mantiply going to help round out the pen. So that leaves us with Ron Marinaccio, who we have tried to get up in the past. We actually traded him away and then picked him back in the Rule 5 draft at this point before last season, and he had a nice year for us. Don't love the lack of control, but he's got outstanding stuff and has been a pretty good relief pitcher over the course of the year. But he has 2 options left. And the other guy we're actually thinking about sending down is Nestor Cortez, who still has options. All he's done the last few years for the Yankees is win 12, 13, and 13 games. We are paying him $10.5 million. But he's going to be a free agent after this year. He's got 2 option years left. With the fact that we're not using him in the rotation, though, I almost feel like I'd rather have him getting regular action down in AAA as a starter down there. I don't know that we need the 4th left-handed arm out of the bullpen, even though with him in the bullpen, we just have the one lefty in the rotation now. It's crazy for a guy that we're spending $10.5 million a year on, but Cortez making $10.5 million, perhaps not surprisingly, refuses to be demoted. Can we send Marinaccio down? We can. So I guess Cortez's stubbornness allows him to make the roster among the 2 players who had options and were on the bubble. So certainly feel good that we've got a pitcher as good as Marinaccio down in AAA for us. But it was definitely a tough decision, and if I had my preference, Cortez would have been down there. Be interesting to see what he does in the bullpen role, where he hasn't been for quite some time. Looking for about $14 million a year for 5 years in terms of the extension he's after. Wonder how much that number may change if he spends most of this year in a relief role. Would also think that his likelihood to re-sign with us might be diminished by the fact that he's going to be in that relief role also. So definitely a surprise, but like I said, Cortez is heading to free agency, whereas Jameson is making the major league minimum. Should be making somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4, maybe $5 million next year if he really has a nice year for us. But we'll get to see what he can do as a regular member of the rotation. And I do think that with Cortez and Yuendrys Gomez, who had a really nice start to his career with us last year on the roster, we've got some pretty interesting options if we do have some injuries among our starting pitchers. And turning to the Yankees roster, Trevino, who will be a free agent after the season, back as our starting catcher. Higgy back in the fold as we signed him as a free agent in the offseason to be our backup. Rizzo back at first base in a late move after spring training. It already started. Volpe's going to be playing second, some combination of Matan and Sweeney at third, Oswald Peraza at short. The outfield, Judge, Bellinger, Wells, and Dominguez. Utility infielders, obviously Oswaldo Cabrera should be seeing some time. And the injuries to Stanton and Outman let one Rule 5 guy make our team. Edinson Paulino, the 22-year-old. Think he's a pretty versatile defensive player. We've actually been playing him a little bit at first base in the preseason to get him as versatile as possible. His bat looks like it could be decent, not great, but with the amount of speed he has, he could, leg out a few extra base hits here and there. Pretty versatile defensively, left-handed hitter. He's never played above Double-A ball. I don't know when we get Outman back if he'll still be on the roster, so he could be a guy that we end up sending back. I believe it was the Red Sox that we took him from. Maybe a guy that we end up sending back anyways eventually, but he's at least going to get an opportunity to stick with the Yankees for the first month or so of the season, given that Outman's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks. Not going to be in the starting lineup, so he's going to have to make the most of pinch hit appearances, coming in as a defensive substitution, and an occasional start when somebody needs a day off or is a little banged up. But we're going to at least give him an opportunity to see what he can do for the Yankees as the new season approaches. And we ended up having a decent spring, 15-10 record with 3 ties. Other than the injury to Stanton, everything went pretty well. But clearly, losing a player making $32 million is a huge blow to the team. Those of you who have been following our series previously, 2023, he was healthy basically the whole year, 47 homers, 105 ribbies. And then he got injured in the ALDS, and we went on to lose the ALCS. Last year, suffered a major injury, missed the bulk of the season, as well as the postseason again, where we once again fell in the ALCS. And now this year, with a fractured knee that's going to keep him out another 5 months, he's certainly not even going to play the 34 major league games that he played a year ago. So his wrecked injury proneness is really hurting us. And unfortunately for us, with those 10-5 rights that he's now earned, he's not willing to waive his no-trade clause. So the number will be going down a bit next year. And I guess we can always hope that at some point he's willing to waive that no-trade clause. I believe we've already got him on the block, but we're going to put him there just in case. I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of interest, but we're getting to the point where we'd probably be pretty willing to hold on to a good chunk of his contract just to finally get him off the books and be done with that difficult contract for the Yankees. So we obviously did free up a little bit of extra money as we pared the major league roster down to 26 players, have a little over $4 million to spend now. So we do have the opportunity as the season moves along to take on some contracts in a trade, or maybe make a trade where we get rid of somebody making a little less for somebody making a little more. So we will have some levers to push. Ownership's goals, win the championship, and increase attendance are the goals for this season. So certainly no shortage of aspirations for these Yankees on the field. As I mentioned, we've been in the ALCS both of our years of this playthrough in 2023 and 2024. The goal is to hopefully be pretty healthy for the playoffs this time around, and hopefully go a step further, get to a World Series. And if we get to a World Series, the goal of the Yankees, of course, is to finally win number 28. And we will find out how our quest for a World Series title begins in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.